The War of 1812, America's first declared war, had been raging for 2 years now. The Americans prepared for battle on their coast, yet instead of attacking the more valuable port city of Baltimore, the British decided to push to the capital of Washington, D.C. They saw how undefended it was and hoped to strike a blow to American pride and prestige while also hampering their political processes. After dragging their feet and refusing a battle could be coming at their city, the capital city, the Americans finally dug in around Bladensburg, but the British crushed the American opposition here. After this, most of the government and military fled the Capitol building. Famously, Dolly Madison made sure to evacuate a portrait of eternal hero George Washington with her so the British couldn't lay waste to it. But the city was virtually undefended, and it was a tinderbox, merely awaiting a spark.
First stop was the U.S. Capitol building, labeled by some the only building worthy to be noticed in the whole city. It was the first target for the invaders. The building, which at the time housed not only Congress but also the Library of Congress and Supreme Court, was first looted by British troops. They piled up furniture and kindling. The troops then mixed that kindling with cannon powder in both the House and Senate wings. The flames consumed the building within minutes. Before anyone knew, the pride of the Capitol was gone.
The next stop was the President's Mansion. A division of roughly 150 British troops went into the building to take anything of value, such as President Madison's medicine chest. A feast was already laid out in the White House dining room prior to the city's evacuation. A feast that now belonged to the British soldiers. After filling their stomachs and coffers, the soldiers ignited another inferno and pushed onward. Located right next to the White House was the Treasury Building. This was another easy target. The British hoped to find money, but there was none to be found. This was only of little disappointment, however, and the building went up in flames. Night fell on the first day of occupation. It said that the eerie glow of the burning city was seen as far away as Baltimore. But this was not a curtain call, merely an intermission.
The wanton destruction of America's capital continued the next day. The buildings housing the departments of War, State, and Navy were ransacked and burned to the ground. Also desecrated was a monument to the veterans of the Barbary Wars. Leader of the raiding force, Rear Admiral Cockburn had a very personal target inside as well. A local newspaper, the Washington Intelligencer, had famously spoken ill of him and labeled him the ruffian. Cockburn was displeased with his negative press and came to burn down that publishing house. But women convinced him that the fire from the Intelligencer would spread to local houses. But Cockburn would not allow the newspaper to escape his wrath entirely. He broke the printing presses and destroyed all the letter C's used for the press, so, quote, "The rascals had no further means of abusing my name."
The obliteration of the capital city continued. But then, the hand of God seemingly intervened on behalf of the Americans. A storm came into the city and extinguished the fires that remained burning. A tornado ripped down Constitution Avenue, lifting a cannon and throwing it down on some British troops. The British ships also took damage. As soon as the storm subsided, the British invaders fled back to their boats and left. In the wake of the so-called storm that saved Washington, all that was left behind were the charred shells of formerly grand monuments to American democracy. The inhabitants were shocked that they had just witnessed such a brazen attack. The attack on Washington was of little tactical importance. The British gained little more than satisfaction. While the British saw this as a justified retaliation against the Americans who had caused destruction in Canada earlier in the war, the Americans labeled this as needless, bloodthirsty vandalism of public property. So too was the move denounced by leaders of continental Europe, where capitals had frequently been captured but never destroyed. Reconstruction of Washington, D.C. began at once, and though an arduous process, the Americans would not give up their capital. The city itself became a martyr, and the image of the ashen government buildings were fresh in the minds of the American people as the war continued. The war soon ended in a stalemate, and the question can be asked if the burning affected the war's outcome at all. Perhaps the biggest effect was in the hearts and minds of the Americans, who remembered the smoky aftermath of the battle, refusing to surrender the capital or the war, and those who said to themselves, "Never again."